confidence for this next year is going to spring from how well we take care of ourselves. Personal growth for ministry leaders is more about empowerment than it is about development. And Proverbs 4:23, one of our favorites, is really the basic outline to personal empowerment growth. Keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it come the issues of life. Very plain instructions. Look after your heart, man. Jesus answered his disciples when they said, Lord, what must we do to do the works of God? They were talking about doing miracles. And Jesus said, the work of God is to believe on him whom he has sent. So apparently, this believing on Jesus takes work. In other words, the diligence that we give, the work that we give, is to apply ourselves to believing on Jesus, to studying his life, to listening to what he's saying, to be taught by Holy Spirit. And that would be the obvious path to empowerment, to becoming powerful. So being diligent, working hard to guard your heart, keep your heart, develop your heart, for out of it come the issues of life. You know, an issue means something that flows out, right? The woman that had an issue of blood, right? In the Hebrew Old Testament, the word issues is used 3 times, one in Proverbs there, and a couple of other times, and it's used in 3 different contexts. And when you read the Septuagint, the Greek version of the Old Testament, the word issues is used many, many times, but always falls into one of these 3 contexts, as it does in the Hebrew language. The first one is that out of the heart come the issues of life, that the heart is the source or the well. God is the source of life, but he pours that life through our heart. We access it through the Spirit, and it manifests in our heart, and it does good to us if the source is right. So look after the source. Life is a spiritual breathing out of those God-breathed words that he's put in the Bible and that he speaks to us by his Spirit. So that's the first context, is that our heart is the source that everything is going to flow from. And then the second context is the actual flow, outflow from that. Jesus said that out of your belly will flow rivers of living water. And so out of your heart flows the issues, the matters, the successes, or the failures of your life. And really speaking about the calling and the purpose, the destiny that God has given us. And Peter said, give diligence to make your calling and election sure. If you do these things, you'll never fall, you'll never fail. We can be diligent to keep that outflow flowing the way it needs to be. And then the third context is one that is most interesting and often used many, many times, especially in the Septuagint. The issues is used to describe borders. And the first idea then would be that, well, our heart then sets the limits of our outflow, of our calling. Be diligent to keep your heart healthy, because it determines the extent or the constraints or the limitations of your success. So that third context really has to do with successes, your success, your call, the call of God on your life, what he's called you to do and what you'll succeed at is going to be determined ahead of time, like measured ahead of time by the condition of your heart. So very important to keep those borders out there where they need to be, and it's hard work, right? Okay, so you've got a source, you've got the outflow from that source, and you've got the limitations of how far that outflow is going to go. But the idea of borders has a much more powerful meaning than just the limits of your life or the limitations that you're putting on yourself. Let's say this is our farmland here, and on the edge of the farmland there's a fence. The land on this side of the fence belongs to me, and all of the land on that side of the fence line belongs to somebody else. So that border, that fence line, clearly and accurately describes who owns what, and it puts peace between me and the guy on the other side of the fence. So here's this precious heart of yours that you have been diligently working on for years, to keep offense out, to keep bitterness, strife, anger, to keep disappointment out, right? To keep vengeance out, getting even with people. And those are commitments that you've made in your heart, and that's where you have set a boundary. And so that fence or that border removes any contention between us. It removes any argument. It's very clear, this land is mine, that land is yours. In a sense, you now live at peace with those things because you have relegated them to the other side of the boundary. They may not enter your territory. And we name those things clearly. Paul named them clearly in the Bible. Here's the fruits of the Spirit, and here's the fruits of the flesh. And the fruits of the flesh are relegated to the other side of that boundary that we've set. Keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it come the boundaries that you set, come the borders that separate the works of the flesh from the fruit and the works of the Spirit. I grew up in the mountains just over here, and we had a farm, a ranch, and we raised cattle. And one of my jobs as a young boy was to ride the fence line to make sure that the wild animals on the outside, like the elk and the deer, hadn't broken down the fence so that the cattle, who are supposed to be on the inside, could wander off into the wilderness. So for some new empowerment, spend some time riding your fence lines, checking out your borders, make sure they're in good shape. Seems a little lonely out there, but actually it's a lot of fun. Abraham lived in the wilderness, actually that belonged to the Philistines. But one day Abimelech, Philistine king, comes along. He has an issue with Abraham, brings his army, because of a disagreement between Abraham's men and Abimelech's men over this well that actually, oh, there goes an owl, that's beautiful, that actually Abraham dug. So Abraham says, let's make a covenant. So he gave Abimelech some sheep and goats or whatever to facilitate a covenant that would bring peace between them, and Abraham could live at peace in that wilderness of the Philistines. And then Abraham takes 7, says ewe lambs, young female lambs, and puts them aside until Abimelech asks, what are those 7 for? And Abraham says, you're going to keep those because that's a witness, that's a testimony that it was me that dug this well. So you're never going to forget it. And so you see how that covenant brought peace between them. Abimelech and his armies ride off, and Abraham can carry on raising his sheep, right? Look at that. Sun's starting to come up over there. So as Abimelech and his army ride away, Abraham names that well Beersheba. That means the well of 7, or the oath of 7, or the oath of the well. So it's a sworn oath. A covenant puts an end to all strife, an end to all contention. A promise, that's an oath, something that's sure. And once there's an oath sworn, it brings peace. Okay, whether it's an oath between friends, or an oath between enemies, or an oath between God and us. Keep your heart with all diligence, for out of it come the personal covenants of life. The psalmist said, swear your oaths unto God and pay them. Make promises to God and then keep them. Why would you do that? Well, because if you don't make an oath, you're not going to pay it. If you don't make a verbal commitment, New Year's resolutions, but real ones, in the sense that I'm going to commit to my prayer life, I'm going to commit to the Word of God, I'm going to commit to my relationships, I'm going to commit to the way I speak, I'm going to commit to the things that I think about and I won't think about. Decide ahead of time to do the things that we know we should do. You keep your heart with all diligence to do what? To make a commitment to do the things that you believe are the things that you should do. This has to do with how our faith works. As a man believes in his heart, so is he. What you believe in your heart and confess with your mouth, that's what you'll have. With the heart, man believes. So the extent of your faith depends on the condition of your heart. So keep your heart with all diligence, because that's where faith works. You're not going to be able to accomplish anything without faith, right? And so when you think of that border, that fence line that puts an end to all contention or all strife, it puts an end to all doubt is what it means. So the source, the outflow, and the borders, the extent of what you're going to be able to accomplish, is going to come from the condition of your heart in its ability to believe God, to have faith, to operate in faith. Abraham names that well Beersheba. And that was a name that was now affixed to that thing in Abraham's heart and Abraham's mind. Now, this is something that we can really learn from Abraham when it comes to having peace with your enemies, the enemies of your soul. In the next chapter, we see Abraham taking Isaac up to offer him to God as God had requested. And there was a ram caught by his horns in a bush, and Abraham used that for the sacrifice instead of Isaac. And Abraham called the name of that place Jehovah Jireh, the Lord is my provider, or the Lord will provide. That's really the key to empowerment, you know, is to name those things that are our enemies and put them on the other side of the border. And to name the things that are our friends and our blessings and put them on this side of the border. On this side of the border, I have the promises of God. I have Jehovah Jireh. I have all of the things that God has promised to me, to include all of the things that God has promised me and to exclude all of the things that He says will hurt me. Covenanting with ourselves is one of the most powerful things that we can do. And we do that before God, right? Make your oaths to God and then fulfill them. Peter said, give diligence to make your calling and election sure. That extends the expanse of how far our calling goes, of how far God is going to use us to bring success, to bring influence for His kingdom into the world. And it becomes the surety, the guarantee of the things that you decide to do, the things that you commit to do will surely come to pass. Wow. A person that never makes a commitment, never verbalizes a commitment, surely is never going to fulfill it. So, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. And very important right now, in the search bar of Facebook, I want you to type in Victory Asia Summit. And when our new page comes up, I want you to join that group. Because this is where Summit is going to take place online. And I sure want you to be part of it. It's going to be powerful.